Here, you can exercise your rights to freedom every day without leaving your home. We don't just say, we do. It's the Stain City way.
There was a train that came from Namibia and Malawi, a train that came from Zambia, Zimbabwe, from Angola and Mozambique, from all the hinterland of Southern and Central Africa. And sadly, that train has come to a halt with the passing of Hugh Masekela. Hello and welcome to Real Talk Live on SABC3. It is a sad moment for the entire country. We're mourning the loss of a legend, a musical giant. He was not only just a legend here at home, but across the globe. The jazz maestro once said, I don't have anything to regret. I think people who have regrets are people who think they can relive their lives. You can see, you can only live each day once. Diagnosed with cancer in 2008, what most people remember about him is that he lived. It was a great honor to have him on the show many moons ago.
I was bewitched with music, you see. And by the time I was maybe 8, 9 months old, I couldn't stop singing.
Wow.
Always, even now as I'm talking to you, I hear a song in my head always. And in class, I used to just look at the teacher and they'd say, Masekela, you know, what is the answer? Say, what is the question? Say, fetch the detention book. What do you really want to do? You know, because the reports on you are just like, I mean, what do you want to do? What would make you happy? And I'd seen this movie. I said, Father, if I can get a trumpet, I won't bother anybody anymore. By the time I was 16, during holidays, big music lovers used to come to my home to come and listen to records because I was a big collector. So we knew, but I wanted to like have access to the teachers that the kind of level of teachers that taught Louis Armstrong and Miles Davis and Clifford Brown and Dizzy Gillespie and all. And they were in the States. So by the time I was 9, I knew I was going to end up in New York. I didn't know how and when.
Wow. Because
that was my aim. I had to end up where all the wealth of talent was and the best teachers.
And joining me in studio right now to help pay tribute is radio presenter and jazz fundi Non Berta. You may have heard her sultry voice on Sundays on the radio with Percy Mabandu. Welcome, Non. So he says, Father, if I could have a trumpet, I won't bother anyone.
Musicians feel a lot. Creatives feel a lot. Yeah. Jazz musicians, I believe, feel that much more. At a very young age, Hugh Masekela knew what he wanted to do. And he was very politically aware, right, of what was happening in the country. The joys, the sorrows, the dark times. And it's something that even now, after democracy, he was unapologetic to say, that this is not in.
Is that why then he was considered the father of jazz? The fact that he was not linear. There were so many places that the name Hugh Masekela would fill a room, in the political sphere, in the musical sphere, in the mentorship sphere, you know, in the I'm a good man sphere.
He was a born teacher. Yeah. Young jazz musicians of today, in every conversation they have, he was also willing to always teach. There was always a moment to teach, whether you were just, you know, after a play maybe at the Market Theatre or, you know, a jazz gig that was happening, he was always willing to teach. You know, he was always willing to say, you know what, how about we do this? And he was someone who gave us richly detailed sounds the world over. Like Batung, it's not just us that are sad. The whole world is really mourning a rich legacy.
Somebody on social media said, yeah, you know, we must celebrate them while they're still alive. And I disagree with that. I really feel that as a country, every opportunity we got, we celebrated Hugh Masekela. Would you agree with me or disagree with me?
You know what? We did. Yeah. I must say with Tate, he would never have allowed us
otherwise
to not celebrate him while he was still here. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine and colleague, Percy Mabandu, talking about how Hugh would always say that as Africans, let's tell our stories. Young people, let's tell our stories. I mean, you know this. He would talk about when he went to the States, he wanted to do his music. Americans wanted to know that we need to tell our story the African way. And that's why, I mean, with artists like Zoe Modiga now, who is, I mean, she's a god. You know, if God was female, I believe in the world of jazz, it's Zoe Modiga. Because she's got Brenda Fassie and then Mams Bongile Kumar, you know, that he was always willing to say, let's tell our stories. Let's tell our stories. Authentically, let's tell our stories.
That's the activist side in him coming up. And, you know, when he was here, we spoke about that. We went at length. Let's play that. Today, perhaps.
We lived to beat the system. That's what people think sometimes, that we were downtrodden and what. But the system had to keep up with the African people because we always knew where they were. Friends came to see me, and a special friend, Julius Mdluli, who used to visit us and bring us things in Botswana, said, you know, next year you're coming home. In fact, I'm buying a big truck. You must just come back and
bring all your stuff, we'll ship you over.
Bring all the stuff, we'll meet at the border, I'll drive you home. And I, you know, I said, come on. Yeah, of course. I was like, come on, it can never happen. Until my sister Miriam called me with Nelson Mandela, said, you must come home. You go to the South African embassy and they'll be waiting for you there. They'll give you a visa.
Do you leave immediately? You're just like, okay, I'm leaving now.
That was in July. I came in September. And the greatest thing for me was, I mean, I never believed that I'd come back home. But the luxury of playing with South African musicians again and not having to explain anything. And it was just like, I felt like, you know, I had an opportunity for a second life.
So that's basically reiterating what you were saying about him, that his love for South Africa was, South Africa was amongst the great loves of his life, right? So he loved jazz, he loved South Africa. What else do you think
you know,
you loved?
When he talks about, he loved us to embrace our authentic hair.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's, you know, sisters will tell you sometimes how sharply he'd like be like, okay, I got you. But we know that he loved us still.
Yeah.
He mentioned Botswana. A friend of mine who had a studio in Newtown, Leon Erasmus, mentioned that his girlfriend, his Indian girlfriend, who had studied about Brahu's music at UKZN, met Brahu when he was still living in Botswana. And I mean, she was meeting her legend. And Brahu, guess what was the first question Brahu asked her? He said, how many African languages do you speak? And she said, I speak a bit of Zulu. He said, I speak 8. He says, you must learn your languages. So those are just some of the stories they share about me. Like
Everyone's got a Brahu story though, hey? To me, every time he greeted me, he'd say, yay, kumnande bye. But, kumnande monti. And I just never knew what he meant. Maybe he had good times there, maybe he's speaking about the woman there, but I was just like, Brahu Angaz, I don't know what you're saying to me.
Yeah.
Speaking of women,
Miriam
Makeba.
Ah, man. His marriage, it said, lasted with Mama Miriam Makeba 2 years, but they became brother and sister.
Yeah.
You know, they eternally
Which is a true
brother
love.
and sister. And I remember years ago when I interviewed Mama Miriam Makeba, she always spoke very fondly of him. And he would always speak about her food as well, still her food. So it was a nurturing relationship.
Yeah.
It was a nurturing relationship, nurturing us as Africans, because Brahu and Mama Miriam Makeba, you know, they were not just our artists, you know, they were not just ours. The whole world, are like, you know, you go to Ghana, you go to Kenya, you go to Congo, they'll tell you about Brahu. But I want to touch base on, you know, he was politically charged at a very young age. You hear the story of Archbishop Trevor Huddleston, you know, that bought him his very first trumpet. It was after Sharpeville shooting, after 1969. And here's a young man that was like aware of what's happening in the country and saying, I'm going to use my voice so everyone knows what's happening at home.
All right, so touching on his great loves, I think it's apt that we play this one where he speaks about Mama Miriam Makeba and, you know, how the relationship started and what everyone else thought about it.
Miriam and I met in 1955, and she was like the goddess of South Africa, and she was 23 and I was 16. But we fell madly in love, and it was both a scandal And for us, it was a joy. So,
I'm sure.
and all the older guys really hated me, but I was also like a stubborn kid, you know. And I had bad friends, so nobody messed with us.
So for you, you know, as the jazz fundi that you are, so last year they announced that Masekela has cancelled his concerts. What goes through your mind?
I was so sad because it was also, I was looking forward to, you talk about the Jazz Epistles, I was looking forward to, I was the MC on the Dina Lady stage at the Joy of Jazz, the Wynton Marsalis and them, done with this. I was saying to my mom and my dad, because these are the sounds that we grew up with. I can imagine everyone that's watching now, you have a song when you think of Hanonali Mukete at home, there was Bra Hugh in the background. When there was a wedding, there was Bra Hugh in the background.
He's the backdrop. He's the backdrop of our youth, of our adulthood, of our celebrations.
Young and old are mourning, you know.
It's the backdrop.
So I was shattered. I was really shattered. But then it said, for me, I mean, you know this in radio, as a broadcaster yourself, that both on radio and TV, so.
No, don't worry. Carry on.
That it's so important that we continue to make sure that, you know, the legacy lives on in terms of his music as well. That we have the Mpumi Dlamenes, you know, the Zol Mudichas that continue to say, I'm African and African jazz. This is how you reignite the fire, you know. So really, really shattered. I mean, even today, it's just been it's been sharing stories with friends.
Where were you when you found out that he passed away?
I was at the studios, at our studios at 702.
Yeah.
And at Hugh, I saw Azania, actually, who had recently interviewed him.
Yeah.
And I wanted to touch base with her, but then I had to. Friends from overseas were also calling. So it's really, really a huge loss to our music. But let's celebrate him. Let's celebrate his music. Because Brahu lived.
Yeah. I want to go as far as saying, and I don't know if I'm going to get crucified for this, but I think the last time there was such a collective mourning was when we lost President Nelson Mandela.
Yeah.
In terms of the impact it had on the country, and I mean everyone, young, old, black, white, Indian, you know, just across the board, I think this is a major loss for us. But you're right, he lived, so therefore we're allowed to celebrate.
And Anele, it's been tough for the past couple of weeks. I mean, we just, you know, had to say goodbye to Brawili.
Yes.
And you think about the legacy and just the richness of these artists that fought apartheid with their music and their words.
Listen, thank you so much for your time. And obviously we're going to be tuning in so we can listen to you because you're going to have one long tribute. His legacy will forever live on in the dreams and memories of those who collaborated with him, co-signed with him, and most certainly in the heart of the nation. After the break, the conversation thought to be taboo. I am talking about parenting regrets. Melanie Bala, Lebyane are coming up next. We'll see you on the other side of this. Thank you, Nan. Welcome back. You're watching Real Talk on SABC 3. So if you're a female, then you've been at the receiving end of comments such as, being a mother is the most important job you will ever have. When are you planning on having kids? A mother's work is never done. You never know true love until you become a mother. And wait, here's one that I find is uttered mostly by men, which is funny for me, but they're like, your biological clock is ticking. So last week, Melanie Bala sparked a conversation about the difficulties of motherhood, and echoing her sentiment was Lebyane, who said motherhood can downright be exhausting, a topic considered taboo, and more women are coming out of the woodwork admitting that parenting isn't cupcakes and biscuits and rainbows, right? And many even confessing that they regret having children altogether. Melanie and Penny are joining us as the people who started this conversation. We thought it was only fair that they can come in here, and as always, you can join in the conversation on WhatsApp, so jump in as well. Ladies, welcome. So what sparked it? Why did you, because I know you posted an article and then started the conversation.
Correct. And it literally was an article that someone else had retweeted, talking about the regrets around motherhood, about becoming a parent. And I posted the retweet, and then I literally took a couple of seconds and I thought, do I share? Do I share that I've been there? You know, because it is that, where you say the shame, the guilt, people are going to judge, what are they going to say? And then I thought, well, it's my truth. It was something I went through, and I just thought, okay, well, let me get them out and get them across.
So I want to, draw the line right down the middle. Being a person who thinks that, at times I am not entirely elated about being a mother is not a person who's got postnatal depression.
No, not
It's
always.
not.
No,
because
not
now,
always.
yes, let's say you're over 12 years down the line, they're 13 years old, you're like, yes, and when my life would have been okay without you.
Yeah, I think, I mean, the case of like postnatal depression is a totally
different thing. That's good, because I don't want people to be like, yeah.
But I think this is a case of mindfulness. For me, this is happy mothers equals happy children. Yeah. If you're an unhappy mother because you're not coping, it's okay to say, I am not coping.
Yeah.
The problem is this thing of like, you know, you want to be superwoman, you want to be the perfect mother, and, you know, your house must run properly, you want clean children, their hair must be intact, their sandwiches are packed properly, and you are intact and you've got your bag, and life is cute, and onto the boardroom. No, that's just, what we're saying is that, hello, it's not possible. It's just, it's too much, and we're trying to portray this image of saying we got it together. We don't have it together.
So here's because your children are they're not old, but they are understanding, right?
Yes, correct.
Is that something that you want them to know? Because here's another thing. I think the reason we don't speak out on it is because kids aren't going to understand it as that. They'll be like, Mom doesn't love me. I'm going to pack a tuna tin and run away.
No, absolutely.
So how do you tread around that?
I think it's so important. You know, I said in my tweets as well that my expectation of motherhood was based on my mother. Yeah. You know, and she was a homemaker, a crocheter, a baker, a cook, you know, great in the kitchen, 4 children, no help. And that's kind of what I thought it was. But I never saw what was behind that.
Yeah.
As you're growing up, you see your mother, you know, in this perfect light.
Yeah.
And even when I did have my son, and he was a couple of years old, I said to her, how did you do it with 4? How did you not kill us? And she said, oh, you know, we didn't have a choice. So even that, she's not telling us
there's no detail.
There's no detail.
There's no detail of exactly what it is. Like, I didn't live with my mom between 3 and 13.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm thinking I was actually shipped off because there was no way that she was going to cope.
Yeah.
So so I struggle from I'm not shipping off my kids.
Right.
Do you understand what
I
I'm
want to do it.
Yeah, I want to do it.
Yes.
So there's a lot of all of those. There's a lot of like what you've seen, and there's a lot of especially when you're very informed, like some of us. You read a lot. You're trying to do things correctly, you end up actually being overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I mean, I have lots of friends who you're overwhelmed and you want to break down, but society doesn't give you the permission to do that, and doesn't allow you. And other people who are mothers, like, we suffer from. Others have done it. I mean, why can't you do it?
Yes, you're tired. We're all tired.
We're all tired. And it's like, excuse me, can I just say that I am tired and it's okay for me to own my emotions? Because for me, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Then that's the stuff that's going to lead to you being depressed and you wanting to cope with other things.
Yeah. And you've got to, as you said, you know, you've got to, I think it's important to convey to your kids that as a mom, you have off days.
Yeah.
You have days where you're irritable. You have days where you're grumpy. You have days where you know what, I'm going to the room to take a nap, guys, because I've had a terrible day. Or so that they understand that there's a mom is allowed the full spectrum of emotion. You're not perfect, you're not on all the time, you're not 24/7 like Supermom. They've got to understand that there's levels and dips and highs.
And there's emotions that you go through because they're also growing human beings. And I think also, you know, I don't know, my kids, I try to want to engage with them so that they understand that there's moments where when you're throwing a tantrum, you're throwing a tantrum. When you're struggling to express yourself emotionally, we need to understand what that is. How can we help you deal with whatever it is? But when I don't feel like engaging right now, please can I not engage? And when I'm good and ready, I can do that because I don't want to say things that I'm going to regret to you.
And this is not about whether you were a single mother or not, because you weren't. Do you know what I'm saying? It's not even about that. It's just about...
It's just about being a modern mother, especially a modern African mother, where you're juggling so many worlds. You're juggling tradition, you're juggling the modern world, you're juggling culture. You want to be lit, you want to slay, you want to be on Instagram.
You're juggling work.
You're juggling so many things. And then you're also juggling just, for example, at school. Okay, there's mother's cupcakes at 7 in the morning. I'm working.
24.
24, on the 24, you must show up. Like, really?
So the notion, I sometimes regret having children. It's something that creeps up, but it's not how you feel all the time. Is that what, and I'm correct in asking that?
For me, it was, for me, I think there was an initial intense phase. So after I had my daughter, because there's about 4.5 year gap between my son and my daughter, that's when I suffered postnatal depression. And then the feelings did become a lot more intense where, you know, I might say jokingly, but I seriously debated, like, I want to pack my stuff and run away because I don't know if this is what I signed up for. Like, and they're, you know, my responsibility, and you've got to mold them and make them into decent human beings and the work involved, and as Penny says, all these other things where there was a really intense phase. And where it got tricky for me, and I realized the one day, was when I started to think about seriously debating getting away from it all.
Yeah.
And I thought, I need help, because that isn't normal. And it's not that I'm expected to be sunshine and roses all the time, but it just didn't feel right. And that's when I went to my doctor and said, I think I have a problem. I think I need help. And so that intense phase, and I'll be honest, it was about 2 years that it took me to kind of get through that. And then now it is better. Once they're older, it is better. But you do have regrets. You know, you see people.
Well, you have moments of dad say, I could have done things
way,
better.
or my life could have gone
I would have
that
been. You know what I mean?
way.
Yeah. It's that. It's like, you know what? Actually, my son is 12 now. Maybe I was thinking, oh, he's going to be so lonely. Maybe I was fine if it was just him. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean that you love the other child less. It's just that the problem is depression comes from when you don't allow yourself to think about those things and express those emotions. And live within them, and you suppress. Also, the other problem is that when you can't talk to somebody about it, then you keep it to yourself. That's when you're looking for other ways to escape out of that. It has happened, the children are there, but let's not create this picture of like, I did it, everybody must do it. What did you do exactly? And how did you do it? Can you tell me, what did you do?
Yes.
You know, like, what do I do when I have to be at a parents' meeting and one is at grade 6 and I was at grade 4, and then the meeting is at the same time?
Guys, just like your tweets, right, where you sparked an entire trending thing, right now you sparked something, but I have to go to an ad break. Okay. Mel will be back. Penny, thank you so much. And you're right. How did you do it? What must I do? That's just one layer of the conversation. We have more stories for you about the idea of parenthood and motherhood. I'm going to ask you to have an open mind today, especially if you're one of the millions of women who rightfully love being a mom. On the way, a woman who does not love being a mom at all. And we're going to listen to her. Regretting having children is not a topic of conversation that one strikes up in the playground or maybe anywhere at all. Society presumes women especially feel elated about becoming parents, but many moms are deviating from the age-old maternal script. I'm joined by a mother of 2 who says she's definitely not cut out for motherhood. She's not passionate about motherhood and constantly traumatized by the thought of her nanny leaving her. Am I exaggerating?
No, you're not. A bit, but not necessarily. Yeah.
Which part am I exaggerating?
I don't necessarily... okay, let's start off by saying I don't hate my kids. Let's make that clear.
Okay.
I do not hate my kids. I just simply think that I'm not cut out for it. I think that if we agree that in the 21st century, a woman's place is not necessarily in the kitchen, then we should agree that parenthood is not for everyone. It's definitely not for me. I worry about everything. I worry about whether am I raising them correctly. I'm anxious. I'm constantly anxious. And the idea of having these 2 souls looking up to me traumatizes me.
Molded by you.
Molded by me. I mean, really, I would have preferred the freedom of not having kids. That's the reality.
So when you look at motherhood and you break it down into, okay, fine, the molding part, the fun part, you know, which sphere of motherhood do you think you get right?
I think providing for them. I get that one right. I'd rather work 24 hours than really spend time with them. I think the providing, I do it so well. I mean, they go to the best schools in PE, but the other parts of it, all the nurturing. And I mean, my mom's doing a far better job than I would, you know. As a result, I was saying to my friends the other day, I'm so worried my mom's not well. And I said to my friends, I'm prepared to spend my last cent because I just cannot imagine my mom and my nanny not being there.
How old are your children?
My son is turning 12 in a week or so, and then my daughter is turning 10 also in a week or so,
Do they feel that you're absent? Is it something they're like, Mommy, you don't spend time with us?
Well, I mean, the other day my daughter said to me, They live with my mom in PE. So they come during school holidays. And the other day, she said, she was with me. And she was like, I want to call mom. And I'm like, but mom's right here. She's like, no, you're the fake mom. I want to call my real mom. And she was referring to my mom.
Did that hurt you?
It did. It did, Anele, but I was like...
Because it was true.
It was true, and in fact, it made me realize that we need to start having this conversation. It made me realize that I shouldn't be ashamed of it. I don't know how others do it, and I'm proud of them, but I'm just not one of those.
But you said you didn't want to have kids, and your mom and your grandmother were like, everyone is having kids, look at you.
What happened is when my mom retired, she's a former school teacher. When my mom retired, I think she got bored. And she got bored.
So she wanted you to fill a class at home.
You know, and I had just come out of varsity, and I was working, of course, and she would be like, this one particular evening, I phoned her, I was overseas, and she was like, I said to her, Mom, I've got something to tell you. It was work-related. And she was like, I told her whatever it is that I wanted to tell her, and then at the end of the conversation, she was like, I thought you were going to tell me that I'm having a grandchild on the way. So basically, I think my family made it easy for me to sort of keep my child when I fell pregnant with my first child. Because I think I was really doing it for them, not for myself.
Why have a second one?
I had a second one because I wanted to prove to them that I'd be able to raise the second one.
Because they took the first one.
They took the first one, and I was like, it's okay. I mean, you know, it's okay, really. I didn't mind. I really didn't mind. But after a year or so with my second one, I was like, no, I can't do this. So, yeah.
So, because here's the thing, the reason people can't speak out, the reason women can't speak out the way you're speaking out is the fear of realizing that you're a bad person or there's something wrong with you. Do you think that there's something wrong with you?
No, I don't think that there's anything wrong with me. I just think that as much as we agree that marriage is not for everyone, parenthood is one of those. It should be optional. I think also our culture as Black people, we need to review the pressure that we sometimes put on girls. I mean, you know that Anele Mdoda, Tina, Taufika una 24, 25 and you don't have a kid. First it's marriage, and then if out to chat, then it my grandmother said, do you get my
Do you feel that pressure is applied to guys? Not the marriage one, the children one.
I'm not really sure. I think there's more pressure on us women. I think there's more pressure on us women,
I'm so fascinated by the fact that you are here and you're saying all of this. So, is this a conversation you're willing to have with your daughter?
Yes.
Okay, but now here's the thing. Because you're not a nurturer, you're not having other conversations with her, right? Your mom has them.
My mom does.
How are you now just going to sweep in and make sure that this is the one thing that you teach her?
You know what? I genuinely and honestly believe that the time will come where I'll probably learn how to sort of bond better with my kids. And I think when that time comes, I'll open up that conversation with her. You know, I'd rather have my daughter enjoying her life, travel the world, do other things. I just don't want to glamorize parenthood. There's nothing glamorous about it. It's a lifetime commitment. It is hard. It is difficult, you know. There's so much that goes into it. And I think that's the part that we're not told. No one talks about it. Everyone wants you to have kids. They're not going to be there. No, they're not going to be there. They're not going to tell you where the money is going to come from, where all the other stuff are going to come from. The psychological support as well is just not there. And unfortunately, as women, you're on your own because half of the time the dads are just not there. Even if they are there, but the pressure is more on you as a woman. So yeah, yeah.
Okay, and we're going to go to a quick ad break, but what I love about that is not once that she says she does not love her children, okay? Let's know that. Joy believes that womanhood should be not defined by the ability to be a parent, but how do dads feel about parenting? Are they regretful? Are they overjoyed? How much of a burden do they share? We've touched on this. Find out after the break. We're joined by a father who says that this parenting thing is just, it's not too bad. Not too bad at all. Find out why. You're watching Real Talk on SABC 3, and today we're chatting about one of the most difficult conversations for women to have out in the open. They actually do not enjoy motherhood. We've heard from moms, but what do the dads say? Joining Joy and myself is communications consultant and father of a girl, Claasen. Do you know what's funny? Nowhere did I mention what you do for a living, but all of a sudden, do you know what I'm saying? All of a sudden, communications consultant, come through, Lance, with your skill, right? Yeah, one of the reasons that we have problems like this in the world, but it's okay. I'll let it slide. Lance, you say you love being a dad.
Of course you do. Of course I do.
How?
But it's work. I cooked yesterday. Today we took the kid for inoculations. I was there. I was holding her. You know, Saturday was daddy daycare day. Mommy, go off and do your stuff, and I take care of daddy. I take care of a little girl the whole day. Sometimes, you know, because she works. My wife works next to the creche, and she goes and she works and she picks the kid up. But you know, I do most of the cooking at home, so. You know, it's as hands-on as it can get, but I probably do about 10% of the work compared to what my wife does. You know, I'm here because my wife is taking care of the kid.
Because you know, you said something, and when you said it, I was like, oh, okay, Lance, I see where you are. Because you said it's daddy daycare day.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Does mommy daycare day exist?
Mommy is worked some more, but and this is that's a complete, you know, I'm throwing myself in there and it's still not enough.
You see, because what I'm getting to is the fact that men will say things like, oh, I'm babysitting my child today, and I'm like, but you're not babysitting her, you're raising her.
Yes.
You know, if somebody else who's not one half of the equation that brought this child is taking care of the child, that's babysitting. Yes. But you are raising her. Do you understand that, you know, men, there is that lesser load when it comes to parenthood?
Of course there's a lesser load. It's not even in the same ballpark, you know. If you know, what we talked about is our social media lives, and if you look at our social media lives, you know, I look like a great dad, but I work and I fall asleep and mommy's picking up the pieces all the time. You know,
when you spoke to the father of the child, is this something that you could openly have with him to say that, you know, I don't actually enjoy being a mother to your children?
Well, yes. I really wouldn't have any reservations.
Yeah. What was the response?
No. I'm saying we haven't really had that conversation. Okay. But yes, I don't mind having it. I don't mind opening it up. You know, it's my truth. It's my reality, and he knows himself that he's just never there. So, honestly, so yes.
So you can't exactly judge you, but okay, so you're always there. What happens if your wife had to say to you, I don't enjoy being a mother? What would your reaction be?
You know, because the relationship has to come first. First of all, we have to, you know, if I would struggle to take care of the kid on my own, you know, I would do shortcuts left, right, and center. You know, with mothers, they try to make everything perfect. You know, because they feel that they're on show all the time. They feel that the pressure's on all the time. If the child comes without the hair being done, they feel the pressure all the time. And that's something that we have to take, you know, we have to really, really have a serious discussion about this.
Oh, you just said something. Do you think it's inherently in us as women to worry about things that you guys don't worry about? You know, like if the hair's not done, you're just like, well, her hair's not done. And for us, it's an image thing. It's like, Umdana cannot
it's a
go out.
reflection of you.
Yeah.
It's a reflection of, because it's like if a man goes out and he's dressed shoddily, if I'd come, you know, dressed badly, my wife would have gotten the blame. You know, so that's the unfair nature of our society, you know. So it's like you have to carry the decision for you have to carry the cost of other people's decision making. And the same thing, that there's a reflection. And so it's not just a case of, well, you know, the child was naughty and decided to run in puddles and stuff.
Yeah.
It's a reflection on your parenting, and people are not afraid to shame each other.
Yeah.
You know, not afraid to judge each other publicly, and that's what we have to just get away from the judging, because we're not walking in that person's shoes. You know, I throw myself into my parenting, you know, but it's still hard. You know, I don't know how single parents do it. I really don't know. You know, we are a committed couple. We throw ourselves. We've been together for a long time. You know, we know each other's ins and outs, but we still struggle.
You still struggle.
It's
and
still
you've got one
struggle.
child.
Yeah, we've got one child. So we don't know how single mothers do it. You know, with multiple children. It's like speaking Greek to us. We don't get it.
I saw you wanted to weigh in.
I also think that, Anele, society doesn't prepare men for that responsibility. I think we just don't expect them to. And that's where it gets a bit unfair, because as much as men are not prepared for that responsibility, with us, we expected to get into it and just flow and just do it effortlessly, you know, and with
But they
men,
say that, no, it will come to you.
it will come to you.
It will naturally come to you. Like,
it doesn't. It doesn't. It just doesn't. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. It just doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean, 12 years later, I'm still struggling. I still cannot sleep nonyana wami ebhedini until today, because I worry into yobana ndizavuka ndikhwele phezu kwakhe ebhubhile.
Yeah.
12 years later. So it just doesn't happen automatically. It just doesn't.
So, Lance, you've never had a stitch of regret about being a parent?
Never. Maybe when you feel that this person has come into your relationship. And this person,
the attention is split.
And the attention is split. And also, and not only that, this person cannot say, well, I'm feeling frustrated now. Can you please speak to me? That comes in, you know. So there has to be a redrawing up of the relationship. For example, my wife and I, we love traveling together.
Without the child?
No, we have to take the child. That's part of the. But that was our thing before we had the child, you know. Or we'd like to go in, for example, we'd finish work at 8 o'clock at night, and let's go watch the late movie. Why? Because we could. Those days are over now, and we have to accept that those days are over. And then the child is part of us, it's part of who we are, and part of where we have to go.
Lance, thank you so much for your time. Joy, thank you so much for your honest testimony. That was really great of Lance to open up to us on this platform. A special thanks to him. After the break, a clinical psychologist weighs in on this. Stay with us. For some people, the regret of having children is not a momentary experience, but a desperate yearning that drags on every single day. Those women are often forced to suffer in silence, as it's not socially acceptable for mothers to think, if I had my time over, I would not have had children, let alone express the regret to others. While these women consistently report their love for their children, they also go into great detail about their distress in their role as mothers. Joining me now, again, Melanie Bala is back, as well as clinical psychologist Hayden Knibbs, as well as Penny. She's back again. Hayden, you just sitting here and you're just like, look, I'm a man, so I'm going to tread carefully.
Indeed.
But weigh in on this, you know, where are we and where should we be heading?
Well, if I look at what everyone's shared, and clinically speaking, what we're talking about essentially when it comes to children is a huge change within somebody's life, within their family system. And the changes can be so dramatic and so large. A lot of the time, people are not fully prepared. And I have a lot of understanding for the jolt that it can give on somebody's life. It can even go so far as to be quite traumatic. And in some cases, not all, by all means, but in some cases it can actually sit with a sense of loss. There is a loss of one's needs that one classically fulfills, because there has to be a compromise there. There's also even, in a sense, a loss of one's individuality, because now they are part of a family, and that is their definition.
Melanie, you're nodding.
I'm chuckling because how many of us have numbers saved in our phone as Sean's mom?
We don't know the
Jack's
person's
dad.
name.
You don't know the person's name.
You don't call them by their name.
Precisely.
You're just that person's mother or that person's father.
Or Sean's teacher.
Yeah, that's who you are.
It's part of the loss. And what we also classically find is a strong clinical theme is independence or interdependence.
Yeah.
So when we find individuals that are extremely independent, specifically in how they fulfill their needs, having a child in, the adaptation is harder to make. So the change will hit, if one can say, it may have a stronger impact. All that being said, it is also about preparing for the change. If one is unprepared and has an unrealistic, perhaps romanticized expectation, then this will be quite a hard knock and a difficult adaptation to make.
So for me, the point of today also was to reiterate to mothers that there is nothing wrong with you for not, because that's what I believe. There's nothing wrong with you for not thinking that, you know, being a mother is everything that it's, you know, supposed to be. Do you disagree with me on that?
I will say, if we hear that, if one feels that, if a mother feels that way, that they are really struggling, that they are unsure, they have potentially the feeling of regrets, to deny it and not to be open about it runs the risk, and we do see it sometimes, of mothers growing up or raising their children but becoming a little bit uninvolved, perhaps negligent, and building up a bit of resentment.
You're nodding. Come in here.
Yeah, I'm nodding because that's why I'm saying, for me, I come from a space of talk about it so you can be able to deal with it. Because we come from a culture where you were not encouraged to talk about it. And I think what sparked me to, even when Mel tweeted about it, to say yes, is because we culturally, we come from a background where you don't talk about it. And nobody wants even to go there where you say, it's been romanticized when you completely. So when you even question certain things, it's like, why are you asking that? You'll manage.
And a big label then becomes selfish because, as you say, it's the preparedness. So if someone had said to me beforehand, what are you prepared to give up to have children? I might have said, whoa, what do you mean? I must give up what? But no one ever, you know, I never got the sense that I'm going to have to give up X, Y, and Z when I become a mother.
Maybe we were not able to communicate it. We were not, we couldn't verbalize it. I think that's the word.
Also because
we were not equipped to verbalize it.
When you say that, it always comes from like it's a material thing. Like, you don't want to part with your money. You want to, and it's not. It's really not a material thing.
No, it's needs. There's essentially lots of needs, choices. I mean, it ripples through on so many different levels. The key, however, is once one has now acknowledged that they are sitting with this challenge and these feelings, it is to work through it. I would rather highlight it as part of a process. The reason why I say this, it's almost as if one is grieving a loss. Because currently, if one is experiencing that regret, I fully understand it, but that is not where we would like the end point to be. Psychological health would be to look back. Okay, if I can put it this way, if we are regretful but say we still love our children, we're basically saying, I'm accepting second place. I'm happy with second place, but we want first place. And that essentially is that one processes the loss, gets past it, and gets to the stage where they say, look, I challenged, it was a challenge, but what I gained at the end of the day, I wouldn't change because it was something magical. It built something, and there is still gains there to be had that do come from.
And a lot of people are stuck in that place where they're grieving and they're not even aware that they're grieving. And that's, for me, that's where we need to talk about that. We need to talk about to say, there's something that you're going to lose, and you need to go through the process of the emotions of it. But you know, that you will be traumatized, you will be shocked, you wouldn't know what to do. Those processes will happen.
But also because it's a joyful time. How dare you be grieving when a soul has been brought into the world? A blessing to the family. Yes, but that's what I'm saying.
It is indeed, and the key is really how it's managed. Because it can be joyful. If we look at it, motherhood or parenthood, for many people, classically, what it can do is it fulfills a role. It can give such a deep meaning. There's also a depth of joy that can come from being a part of building something with longevity, the investment behind it, to raise somebody and watch them become an individual. There's a lot that we know about joy that comes down to selflessly connecting and assisting a person.
But the key is to be able to disconnect from it.
I wouldn't necessarily say disconnect, I would say appropriately determine it. Healthy motherhood would be to adapt to the developmental changes of the child, but also to have individual relationships and an individual relationship with the child. So it is to include all of the factors. If that can be done in an ideal world, and I want to stress, even if it is done, it will ebb and flow.
Have its ups and downs.
We are humans, of course. But there can be much that can be gained from it.
You see, for me, that's the thing, is I wish someone had explained to me the spectrum. That there are mothers who are going to women who are going to have children, and the mothering thing is going to come naturally, and it's going to flow, and there are others who don't. And I think that's what I hope this conversation does, is tell people there's a spectrum. There's this and there's that.
Yeah.
And you're not a bad mother if you're not the, you know, Mother Earth, nature, barefoot type.
Yeah.
You're just You're just a different kind of
You know,
mom.
the conversation thing is very important, because I remember a friend of mine had a child 4 years before I had my child, and she said, you know, they give you a child and they say, immediately you're going to love them, and you're going to think, I've never felt a love like this. And she was like, they gave me this child, and I was like, look, at best you look familiar. At best you look familiar. Yeah, she was like, I get I need to protect you, and you kind of look like somebody I know, but she says the love, she's like, the love grew, and for me, she literally opened a door of escape for me that was like, if they give me my child and I'm not immediately loved, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay, and that's why it's grown. So the conversation thing, what you guys are saying, is very important.
It's very important, and we're not having that conversation.
We're not.
I think for
Well,
me,
we are now, but
we are now.
yeah.
I think for me now is like, I'm tired of like what I went through, like the slap bangs that I went through. I don't want anybody coming after me going through that. I'm done with that.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'd rather say it, and then one day you'll remember, like, I think I had Penny say that.
Yeah.
Rather than, I've never had this been said, and you just walk around angry with everybody. And you're like, why didn't you tell me?
Okay, Hayden, Melanie, Penny, you guys saved a few souls today. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for your honesty. That's another show done and dusted, South Africa. And as the world has lost a musical giant with the passing of Hugh, tributes have been pouring in and continue to do so. Thank you so much to my guest, Nonberta, for coming to share her stories of Hugh with us. Obviously, you know, for the next 3 weeks, we're going to be totally engrossed by this, and we can. Thank you so much to my guests who came to speak about motherhood, Melanie Bala, Penny Lebyane, Joy Peter, as well as Lance Claasen, and our clinical psychologist, Hayden Knibbs. From us to you, Charles. See you tomorrow. Bye. Oh, wait.
The one thing Belafonte taught me was that if you come from a people whose music or talents you use to get known, then you owe them.